Welcome back to another edition of the Single Parent Daily podcast with your co-host
Evan DeMarco.
and Chady Dunmore.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Welcome back, guys.
Yeah, so this is fun. If you guys are watching this on video, we're going to do some blooper reels with this one because we're sitting outside by the pool. The umbrella just fell into the pool. It's been a little bit of a technical.
And I did my first intro.
And you did your first intro.
And
But you
Took like four
crushed it.
tries. 4 tries.
No, you crushed it.
Maybe 3, but yeah.
You know what?
You're really good at the intro, like introducing people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've been doing it a while. I think it's
Yeah.
just like anything. It's practice,
Yeah.
Practice makes perfect. I was going to say something, and then my brain just went splashy.
We're going to talk about something that you're scared of.
Maybe that's
why.
That's why. I'm scared. So today's episode, as we film this, today is August 5th. Is that right?
Yes.
6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in there. That's the other problem, is in the age of COVID.
Today's the 6th.
I have no idea
I
what
know.
day it
It's
is.
like, what day is it today? Today's August 6th.
August 6th. So we are 8 months into 2020.
8 months into 2020, and we're still being like shackled.
Shackled, yes. And not in a good way.
No.
Not like never
No.
mind.
Yeah.
That's another edition of Single Parent Daily
Yes.
Podcast, the bondage edition, 50 Shades of Grey. No, one of the things that I wanted to talk about as we get closer to school, and there's some distance learning as a result of COVID, one of the challenges that I've had this summer is trying to keep, my daughter entertained, right? And
Which is how old?
she's 6 years old.
Yes.
So as a single parent,
And I have a 14-year-old, and it's hard to keep her entertained as well.
exactly. I mean, right now, and so they're so used to being around their friends. They're so
Yeah.
used to socializing, and the social aspect of that age is really important. So one of the things that my ex and I have done, and I really applaud her for coming up with this idea, is rather than trying to do like 3 and 4 days on and 3 and 4 days off, we're just doing 2 and 2, and that that allows us both
2 days on and 2 days off.
2 days on, 2 days off, and that allows us both to work from, we both work from home, or at least now I do as a result of COVID. I used to work from a Delta aircraft, which I haven't been on in so long. Dear. But it allows us both to work, and then, allows our daughter to not really go stir crazy. But one of the things that I recognized early on in this, as the data was starting to come out about transmission rates and the R0 numbers of COVID, was my daughter came home one day, and she was telling me that her mom had like a little bit of a get-together at her house. And I remember going to bed with her that night, or I was putting her in bed, and she wanted to snuggle with me. And I was like, and I love those moments. And I had this instant visceral reaction of like, no. And all I could think about was she was around other people. And it bothered me to no end. Like after she fell asleep, like I broke down and I started crying. I'm like, I want that connection with my daughter. And I know that at 14, we're not going to be doing that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a small amount of time for which we have that kind of, that
I still
cuddle.
snuggle with my baby girl.
And I think mothers and daughters are different.
Yeah.
If I'm doing that with a 14-year-old girl, I think CPS might get called.
No, you'll be fine. It's a different mentality. She's always going to be your baby girl where you're like hugging and snuggling her. In fact, you're going to want to do it more when she gets older because you're not going to want her to want other people to fill that role.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Believe me, yeah.
And I've always loved that idea that, a father is the benchmark from which a girl will judge all other men for the rest of her life.
120%.
And I want to be that for her, but I was also so afraid of snuggling with her because I had this fear of COVID. And it bothered me to no end.
So when she gets sick, do you like stay away from her?
No, not at
Okay.
all. She's 6 years old. She's a walking germ
Were
factory.
you subconsciously scared of it? Like, let's say if she had it, because as kids, their immune system is way better. They can probably carry it, and they wouldn't even know. And then she would get you COVID, and then you're like, okay, this is how am I going to support my family? Because
No, it was more, am I going to leave my family? And so
Yeah.
one of the things that, and I've spoken to a couple other parents about this, one of the challenges that we have as single parents is that when our kid goes away,
yeah,
we don't have any control over what goes on at the other parent's house. But now that control has the potential, based off of the data that we're seeing with COVID, to cause some serious health repercussions. Now, you've had some health challenges,
Yeah.
right? So if your daughter came back to your home with COVID, that could be a demonstrable issue for you.
Or my boyfriend travels. Like,
Yeah.
he hasn't been traveling, but recently he was in Washington for a show, but he if anything, he's more scared of getting COVID. I feel like I've seen him like wash his hands more than I've ever seen any man ever wash their hands more than, and I actually was okay with him there. He said that there was less people at the show, and it was the security precautions and cleanliness he felt safe even traveling. He said it was just like, but it still goes in the back of his mind. And I was thinking, please don't bring anything back, because I would get sick, and then I can't I'd be in the hospital again.
Yeah, or worse.
Or worse.
And look, we're both in an age demographic that's not predominantly in the mortality group. But, you start throwing comorbidity factors on there, existing underlying medical conditions. There's a concern there. And what we don't know about this disease is the scary part.
Yeah.
Here we are in my backyard in Sacramento, California, and one of my neighbors is the head of cardiology and the ICCU at Davis, which is one of the hospitals here. By far and away the smartest man that I know. And when I want news about COVID, I talk to him. I don't go to Facebook. I don't go to Instagram. I don't go to CNN. I go to the smartest people who are frontline on this disease. And, I asked him the other day, I'm like, what do you know today? And he's like, less than I knew yesterday. And when the smartest people in the country or on the planet are still baffled by this disease day in and day out, it goes to show you that, we're in a place where we need to be ever vigilant. And to that extent, it's like,
Or are they? Right? Then you think like that. Then there's subconsciously me in my mind. I'm thinking, and I'm not saying the doctors, but like government stuff. Like I feel like, are they making COVID bigger than what it really is? I'm not taking away of it being a virus that's out there that can actually harm people.
Here's where I fall on this, right? I work with a lot of doctors, and I don't think that there's a political conversation about the concerns around this virus.
Right.
The flu has an R naught of 1 from everything that we understand, which means an R naught means that for every one person who gets it, they're going to infect one other.
Right.
And so you have a linear progression of infection with the flu. Now, the flu might actually be more lethal than COVID, but it's the linear progression, so less and less people get it. And once you get it, if you survive it, the antibodies that your body develops kind of really protect you. What we're seeing, and they protect you for a long enough time. What we're seeing with this, at least based off of the most recent data, and this all changes every hour, but the R naught for COVID is like 3 to 4. So for every person that gets it, they're going to infect 3 to 4 more people. Some of those, 80 to 85% based off of the data, are going to be symptomatic or asymptomatic or have mild symptoms. But there's going to be 15% or more of the population that gets severely sick from this. And that severe sickness with pulmonary scarring, with cardiovascular issues, with all of the things that we don't know are the long-term ramifications of this disease, are the big concerns. And having or knowing multiple people who've had this and been really, really sick, I know that this is not something that's a conspiracy. It is a legitimate disease that has the potential to do irreparable harm to communities, to people, and to long-term health. And so, again, I come back to it as like, I'm young-ish, I'm healthy-ish, and so do I need to worry? No, but then you hear things of like, the 41-year-old guy who was in perfect health dropped dead of COVID.
Yeah, God forbid.
So this. I apologize for the long rant on this one, but I think what it boils down to is, yes, I have a innate fear of this disease, and I also and that is not my daughter's fault.
Yeah,
it's the time that we live in. And so when my daughter goes away for those 2 days and she's exposed to, my ex-wife and my ex-wife's, husband, and he travels a little bit, and I know that they're very, very, they're doing their precautions. They're very, very aware of this. And so it's not like they're just cavalier, but it still gives me pause. And to the extent that, like, are we at a place where we need to be afraid of our kids?
Yeah. Well, now that school's starting again, that's another thing too.
Yeah.
It's like, especially when you have the younger kids, and then even the older kids, like, I don't think they're going to be access to water fountains anymore, but they're doing class blocks now. Everything's virtual, and if they're in person, I think it's like, I'm not sure if it's 2 days on. They keep changing it, and this is starting next week. It's just really like, it's scary because we do have to worry about our kids. What are they going to be carrying? Because their immune systems are way better.
Totally. Yeah, and there are a lot of things that we can discuss that I've really worked on, protocols in the health and wellness space to bolster or, to support our immune response to this, and we could talk about that, and I could post something on that. There are things that we can do. We can wear our masks. That is not a political conversation.
You know what's interesting about all this conversation, and I've known you for quite a few years, the fact that we're talking about COVID and your daughter, but the fact that you're saying you're scared of your daughter, because I feel like there's another facet to that. Like, I feel like subconsciously, your daughter's growing up, and if anything has like control of Evan DeMarco, it is that little girl.
Well, that was
yeah, that was a little laugh of like, yes, because it's true. I feel like this girl she's your world.
Yeah,
She's your
she
world.
is.
And you base your decisions on revolving around her. And also, too, like, she's also your motivation to stay healthy, to be better, to do better. And I feel like let's tap into what
Oh,
are
you want to peel
scared
back
of?
the layers
Yeah,
of that one.
let's peel back the layers on like what are you scared of Piper? Like also too like dating, or like her seeing something and she doesn't meet the standards of Piper's, or like let's talk about this a little bit more. Cuz my daughter scares me. Like I see her potential and I know what she's capable of, but also too I also want to display and be a role model to her, right? And there's walking on eggshells being parents, especially single parents raising little girls in this time and age right now with social media. We have child trafficking going on. We have virtual school now where like predators are like now like luring kids or accidentally like there's just so much going on now. It's such a different time and age for raising our daughters that I think you and I I think it's safe to say that not parents are scared of their kids, but they're like our pride and joy. And they're like, I don't know, maybe I'm going too
No,
deep
I
into
don't think
this.
so. I think that there's an element of fear in parenting that I never knew possible, right? And
we never sleep the same.
no,
again.
God, no. No.
I know other parents are listening to this and they're like, I like tell people when I see them pregnant for their first child, I just say, all I know is you should sleep as much as you can now because you will never sleep the same way ever again.
Ever again.
And I'm not just saying your kids could sleep perfectly at night. I'm talking about just being a parent, knowing like you are responsible for this human being. You are responsible. Like every move that you make, it's based on you.
I remember early, like when my ex was pregnant and we were having an OB visit, and we had this grandiose idea that once our daughter was born, that we would alternate nights. So one night she would stay up and she would breastfeed, and the next night she would pump, and then I would feed our daughter. And I remember we told this to our OB and he just started laughing at us. And he's just like, sure, okay, let me know how that goes. And I remember it was funny because we tried to do it, and then she would get up with her, and then I was awake. Yeah. And then I would get up with her and she was awake. And you just realize like you never sleep again. And now like one of the things I talk a lot about health and wellness in a lot of different forms. Yeah. I'm all over the country or all over the world talking about health and wellness. And one of the things that I've really talked about are the value of sleep lately. And one of the most disturbing things that I've read is the percentage of people that check their phone first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And then, what that does, right? It disrupts, cortisol and melatonin response. It sets you up negatively throughout the day. It becomes an addiction, right? And so what do most people do before they go to bed is they check their phone again. And so there's this epidemic of all of this technology that permeates our lives. And I talk about how detrimental that is to your health. And I leave my phone right next to my bed, and I wake up probably 3 times in the middle of the night to check it, to make sure that, like if she's not with me, that her, something didn't go wrong, like her mom didn't call or something like that.
Right.
So I'm a hypocrite of epic proportions by that virtue alone. I will not sleep, like it does, so that all being said, yes, it's a fearful time. It's, I'm afraid of her right now because of that. I don't want to leave her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to got a little windy here, so hopefully it's not too big of an issue. So in the age of COVID, anytime you get something, a sniffle, a tickle in the back of your... Yeah.
I'm wondering if I need some Zyrtec D or am I going to die in a couple of days?
You're like, is this... my nose is running. Yeah. I've got corona. Like, the corona toe, right? Yeah. Like I stubbed my toe the other day. And then all of a sudden, like, my toe hurt. There was cause and effect on why my toe hurt. And then I'm like, I've got corona. I'm going to die.
You're a mess.
I'm a mess. And as a health and wellness person, I'm like, I am one of the original biooptimization geeks out there. My whole focus is improving people's health and lifespan. And so this has been a very unique time. But I ended up going into the doctor because I was having some, like, chest pain. Anxiety, right? They do an EKG. The EKG supposedly comes back fine. And then yesterday, I get this email from the doctor, and it's the test result. And basically what it is that my resting pulse rate is really, really low.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have something called bradycardia. And basically it just means is that, like, my resting heart rate is in the mid 40s.
Wow.
And
that's like borderline dead.
It is kind of borderline dead. And so when they did the EKG, they found something which is common in people who have bradycardia, but it's uncommon if you don't have that. And if it's uncommon and you just have a normal resting heart rate, it's a heart attack. So they put that on the paperwork, and I'm literally like, these are massive coronary events where your probability of survival is not that good. So I get this test result yesterday, and I'm like, my daughter's out of town at her grandparents', and I'm like, I'm never going to see her again.
Yeah, you're tripping out.
I'm full on breaking down. Like what am I, I'm like, I'm calling my doctor. I'm like, and he calls me back. He's like, dude, you're the healthiest person I know. Like, stop being a...
Anxiety is a real thing. Like, you feel like you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had probably 2 of them where I'm, like, hyperventilating. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, I'm literally going to die right now. And it's the worst feeling. But, especially with everything that's going on now, I mean, we're like, what did I touch? Or who am I around? Or and as parents, we're naturally going to be like, am I going to see my baby again?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny. I order a lot of food here.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be a little bit of a gourmand in the kitchen, and I think those days have come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think that I'm just supporting local business, but the truth is I'm being lazy.
Yeah.
But every time I get a package, like an Uber Eats, you'd think that I was scrubbing in for surgery after I open that stuff. I'm like, I'm in the kitchen. So
it's good though.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's a natural fear. So I want to talk a little bit about that fear. I want to talk a little bit about how do we, in this day and age, protect ourselves and really still embrace the relationship that we need to have with our children, knowing that, yes, as little people with a higher probability of, of asymptomatic issues with COVID, if they get it, that they could pass that on to us, and there could be some bigger issues.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a daughter that bounces back and forth. Have you guys established any rules as far as, like, can she be around people?
Yeah.
Like, what does your COVID life look like?
So my co-parenting is I usually have her 95% of the time. Her dad did decide to have her fly up. He was in New York being quarantined, and he wanted me to fly her up by herself
to the epicenter.
To the epicenter.
Yeah, okay.
I laughed on him. I was like, yes, baby, no. I was like, are you crazy?
It's like, I'm hanging out in Chernobyl. You want to come visit?
Basically, he's like, well, it's a little outside of New York, and she would be fine. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. But I have her most of the time, so I wasn't stressed out about that. Recently, her grandmother's pretty good about, like, keeping her away from stuff. They usually just go to her house, and her dad doesn't have her as often. Right now, she is with them. So they don't really go out because he has health issues. So I'm not really worried about that because he's just as neurotic as you are, which I'm kind of thankful for. But I am worried about her going to school because since I've had her, she is a free spirit, my daughter. She's like, I don't need a mask because when she'll go to see a friend, I'm like, you need a mask in case you go to the grocery store. You guys go get like a Jamba Juice or something, like walking in. It's just kind of like a law now. Like when you go into these places,
wear a
you're not allowed
mask
to go in without a mask. But my daughter's, she's just one of those kids who are like, it's not gonna happen to me. She's a kid.
She's a kid.
She's a kid. She just has no idea.
If you had told me at 14 that I was gonna get sick with something, I'd be like,
yeah.
Like, yeah,
and
right.
I say, you know what, baby, you may have, because she never gets sick. Make knock on wood. God bless her. Let me find some wood. But I get sick often. So I said, do it for mommy, please. I said, mommy gets sick often, and you may be able to withstand this, but mommy couldn't.
Yeah.
And do it for my mom, her grandmother, and great grandmother, who both have emphysema. So, when we visit them, we just don't want to bring that around. So she's like, okay. Then it puts a different perspective, right? It's like when we would take care of ourselves more if we knew it involved our child.
Oh, totally. And that's one of the really fascinating things about this, the political conversation about masks. How is that political? Like,
You know what? There's a lot of people who are influencers that make it very political.
yeah, and those people, I'm sorry, again, I have friends who have taken a very political stance on this, but here's the thing about this. Like, until you've gone through medical school as a virologist, or as as someone who has a seat at the table medically, who can say that there's no value whatsoever in wearing a mask, then shut up. Because and I often find I will definitely get hate mail on this. I love to point out that I get hate mail.
You're definitely going to get hate mail on that.
So here's it's oftentimes the very, very, dare I say, Christian coalition. Now, you might punch me on this one, but I'm going to say this anyway. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence to support the fact that if two people are wearing a mask and one person has COVID, that the transmission likelihood goes down exponentially. Like, it's like 0.003%. So if you've got it, I don't have it, but we're both wearing masks and we're even having this conversation, I'm most likely not going to get it, even though the R0 numbers are kind of high.
So how does the Christian stuff get involved in this?
How is it that they're willing to spend so much time on faith, the faith of like, I'm going to do all of this stuff because the Bible says so, but they're not willing to look at the hardcore science that says you could be saving another person's life by putting this mask on?
Yeah, but I mean, you're like grouping.
Oh, it's a broad generalization. I get that. I'm not saying all Christians. I'm just saying, but
because I'm Christian and I don't say that, and I know a handful of Christians that don't say that. So it's just a lot of vocal people, and gosh, it's like in anything. There's people who, in every career or religion status, that they are just like very vocal about their opinions, and then people categorize that person into.
I'm not trying to. It's a bit of a broad generalization, but what we're finding from everything that I've seen is that there's a hardcore political component to this one. Is that a majority of Republicans, hardcore Republicans, are saying this infringes on my constitutional rights. I don't have to wear a mask, and I'm like, the constitutional rights of being being a citizen of the United States are kind of advanced citizenship. I've talked about this in the past. Freedom isn't free. And right now the cost of that freedom is put something on your mouth. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And so, coming full circle in all of this, my daughter did a couple day camps, and it was kind of.
She had to wear a mask?
She had to wear a mask.
Isn't that crazy? They're having kids do them in sports too.
Yeah, I couldn't play football in a mask. How the hell do you do that?
Even like adults in gyms now that they have to wear a mask, and I rather work out from home.
But here's something funny about this, right? Remember, this was probably a couple of years ago where we had those oxygen deprivation masks that people were working out with because it made them feel like they were training at altitude.
And they look like Hannibal.
Yeah. Or Bane from Batman. So how is it that we've gone to, I'm going to spend a couple $100s on this oxygen deprivation mask because it makes me train better too. I don't want to wear a mask at the gym.
Yeah.
So when people have the choice, they'll choose it. When people are told to do something, they won't do it. And that anti-disestablishmentarian behavior, granted, was kind of the foundation or the bedrock of this country. We didn't want religious persecution. We didn't want taxation without representation. And so we rebelled for real legitimate reasons. Wearing a mask with the potential of protecting your fellow man and saving a life is not a big enough reason.
I know. And then you have the people who have that say that they have breathing issues, that they don't want to wear it, and you see all these videos like all over the place. And then you have people who are saying that then they like get so irritated that they're spitting on people. And
I saw a video of, and I will call this guy out because I think that he's completely full of blue mud. It was Dr. Ben Lynch, and I think he's a naturopathic physician or whatnot. So he goes on his Instagram and he's telling people that he's a very healthy guy. He puts a mask on and went on a walk, and his pulse ox dropped to 92. Now, I ran that by some friends of mine, again, some of the smartest people in the world that I know, just to be like, is that possible? And their response is, unless he has a pre-existing medical condition, the only viable reason for his pulse ox to drop to 92 is a giant case of bullshit. And so now we've got people perpetuating this. And
Yeah.
granted, I could be wrong. I
No,
will be willing to say he said that, and I would love to see that Pulse Ox reading. I would love to have Ben Lynch come on here and explain why a insignificant percentage of the population who might have pulmonary issues shouldn't wear a mask. I get that. But the average person, a healthy male,
Yeah.
cannot get...
Who's complaining that they could be asymptomatic and then they could pass it on to someone and not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
That's rude. I totally agree with you on that. I go back and forth, but I also feel like you have to respect your others. Like, it's just like, yes, we are in a free country, but like, I also know the rules, and I don't have a problem following the rules because I just want to carry on with my life, and there's other things I want to focus on. And there's the people who just like, they may not have masks, but they're passing you a mask to go into Whole Foods, because they're like, you can't come in without it. And then you have these people who are like punching, getting physically violent with these people at the front who have nothing to do with it. They're just trying to support their family. They have no political views, and they're like defending their lives because they're just following the rules for their job.
Yeah. There was in Bethel Township, Pennsylvania, 2 days ago, there was a guy who walks into a cigar shop without a mask on, and the rules of Pennsylvania now are that all public places are required to have masks. So the shop attendant says, "I'm sorry, you can't be here. You have to have a mask." Apparently, the guy grabs a couple cigars off of the counter and just walks out. So the shop attendant walks out after the guy to, I think, probably just take down a license plate number and report that to the authorities. The thief who grabbed the cigars pulls a gun out of shoots one in the air, and then he shoots two at the shop attendant for a mask. And this is where we've come. This is where we've come to in this conversation, is that I'm not afraid of my daughter because my daughter's a high probability of getting COVID, being at her mom's or being around her mom or being around her. But it's the people who are not taking this seriously and not allowing our scientists to get out in front of it. And maybe maybe this conversation started with me being afraid of my daughter, but it ends with a call to action of people being more aware of what's going on in this world and acknowledging that our ability to survive this is something that I've been saying for a long time, is we live, we grow stronger, we fight another day. I actually took that from the TV show Highlander.
It sounds pretty legit, though.
It does. It's it's as true if you're a 5,000-year-old immortal as if you're a 40-year-old person living in Sacramento. Put a mask on.
How does your daughter feel about the mask thing? Like, was she like hesitant trying to put it on? Like,
She couldn't care less.
does she like care about like the styles?
No.
Like, I want a unicorn, Daddy. I'm not wearing this one until it's a unicorn.
No. She couldn't care less.
Yeah.
The beauty
I
of
think it's
them.
annoying for kids, but I think also too that they're younger. They're like, oh, what's
They're
the big deal?
adaptable.
Yeah.
This is, and your daughter's 14.
It's harder to adapt to a teenager because they're just like free spirits and they just want to be cool. I think that hopefully they're going to implement like hoodies that have the mask. That's
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's a different world right now for being a mom to a teenager. It's just so scary in so many different ways. But then you add COVID to the mix and then trafficking. I'm like, oh my God.
It's some of our most popular movies out are the Avengers or the Spider-Mans or all of these Marvels. And kids love these because they're heroes. And the heroes do one thing, and that's save people's lives. So why is it that we can't reframe for our kids that putting a mask on is being the biggest hero that you can be?
Yeah.
And I know that's probably an argument that doesn't go over well with a 14-year-old, but a 6-year-old, she doesn't care. She's like, I'm doing what I have to, and you just don't.
Yeah.
We're
when
on
we
it.
give them options, that's when they start like becoming finicky. But as long as they know that that's part of the program.
Yeah. And it's like, a kid who is so bored being at home.
Yeah.
The option was you can put the mask on and go to camp and have fun, or you can sit in the backyard and count rocks.
Is she doing virtual school?
At this point, we're getting phone calls pretty much daily from the district, and they don't seem to be making up their mind. It seems like it's distance learning or virtual to begin with, and a couple of the parents have kind of agreed that maybe what they would do is a floating school within like 3 to 4 kids, so we could try to kind of keep it tight-knit.
So I think, like, for me, there's a lot of single parents and parents who are listening to this podcast, and they're wondering, like, what are we going to do next? Like, our kids we're not sure if most of it's going to be virtual and online classes, and how, as parents, are we going to do this and work?
There,
That's it.
yeah.
Because there a big pause. It was literally like a 4 second pause that we're like, I don't think any of us have the answers to, except, hiring online tutors or teachers.
Yeah, and there are some major problems that are going to impact the way that we live our lives right now. And for people that have to work, that have jobs where maybe they're essential and they have to go into an office, or they have to go into a place, how does that work? For people who don't have the financial resources to hire tutors, you know, this virus has fundamentally cocked things up for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And you take it beyond the health ramifications, and we can look at the Spanish flu, and as there are historical precedents that show like how long it takes things to recover, right? And government intervention on the financial side, I think the extra $600 a week here in California for people who are out of work as a result of COVID. What is $600 a week?
I know.
Like
Nothing.
Nothing. Like,
Doesn't do anything.
like
I mean,
that.
it obviously can feed a couple meals, but I feel like there's so much more that's needed.
Yeah. So real problems, and I think the real solutions begin with, do the right things essential so that we can get things back on track. I know that there are 3 promising vaccines in the works right now. It sounds like there's a couple.
How do you feel about that's crazy? Honestly, I don't feel comfortable with the vaccine right now.
Well, here's my thing. I don't want to be one of the first million people to.
Yeah, you're gonna have to yank this. There's a plant behind Evan.
And it keeps
that keeps trying to
making
tip
out
up.
with me.
It's like
Buy me a drink first.
this is a tough. It's very hard for any parent to kind of figure out like what's our next steps. Like, how are we going to do this? For me, I work a lot from home. So I do online training, coaching. I work as an influencer manager for a fitness apparel line. And then I, do a couple of like network marketing stuff. And I'm a mother. Like, I do a lot of stuff from my phone and home, except for a few clients that I train in person. I am worried about it because I am already managing so much that I was able to do those other jobs because I had literally between a 9 to 2 p.m. a clock time where I can work and focus on work.
You just burn as fast as you can.
You burn as fast as you can, and then you're back to being a Uber driver for your kids, driving them to extracurricular activities or helping them with homework or whatnot. And now this is like, and you know how it is with parents when the kids are at home from school during the summer. It's like we need a break sometimes, like, especially, keeping the roof over our heads. And now all of a sudden parents are teachers, and it feels like this is March. We ended the year thinking, oh, let's wrap up the year. We can figure this out. Now we're going into August. School's starting again, and we're still doing this. And I think every parent is scared of their kids right now.
Yeah, we're all scared, and we're scared of the future. And, back to the vaccine thing, it's a fascinating conversation. I still don't believe that there is any legitimate scientific evidence that the vaccines cause autism. And Jenny McCarthy can come join us on the show and we can discuss that. We can have some medical experts discuss that. I work in a community of doctors, and there's a contingent of naturopathic doctors who are very pro anti-vax, and they don't really show up with a lot of good data to support that. Now, so when we talk about getting rid of things like polio, stuff that we've eradicated a long time ago, when we talk about like the measles, the mumps, the rubella, like all this, the MMR stuff that, the Tdap that we give our kids.
Very good. All this stuff.
This is my my wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that I can't. I have looked at this a million different ways, and I have not seen any scientific evidence that supports the fact that we should not be doing that. Now, are there extenuating circumstances? Of course there are. And the data, so that's the pro, right? Like, there's not a lot of scientific evidence that typical vaccines, especially for kids, have any issues. Of course, there are outliers. Then we get into new vaccines, and in 4th grade, my teacher played the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. And what we had to do was pick one element out of that.
What grade is this?
4th grade. 4th or 5th grade. And you had to pick an element of the song because the whole song is a chronological historical breakdown from like 1930 to 1970 or something like that. And I remember in the song "Children of Thalidomide," and I didn't know in fourth grade what that was, but as I got older and I did some research on it, recognized that this experimental vaccine didn't seem to have any side effects for the people that were administering or having the vaccine administered, but the kids of those were all born without, arms or legs, so mass deformities. We've come a long way since the children of thalidomide. And when we look at how vaccines work, we take an element, we take a protein of that vaccine, we inject it into the body, and we allow the body to utilize that as a roadmap for creating antibodies or antigens for that. I have every confidence that we will find a vaccine that will work for this. That being said, I don't want to be one of the first million people to get it.
Yeah, I don't even want to be the guinea pig.
No.
And that's why I feel like it's still new. And we're definitely going to be in history books when it comes to this disease and how it literally stopped the world from doing anything. But I feel like a vaccine now that I think it's already killed some people.
I have not heard that we've had any deaths as a result of the vaccine. I've seen some, there's been some side effects.
Yes.
And those side effects really, when you look at the clinical trials of these vaccines, are anticipated based off of the dosing, right?
Okay.
And so you'll have one group that will do a minimal dose, one group that will kind of have like a medium dose, and one group that have a really large dose. And that allows in these fast clinical trials pharmaceutical companies to really cement what the proper dosage is for the average person.
Are they doing this on people?
Yes. And so in phase 3...
How do you sign up for something like this? How do because this could be, we could have our kids vaccinated with this. Like, do we have people who sign up and say, I'm going to do...
Totally, yeah.
That's insane.
And in fact, I did read...
hopefully they get some type of
compensation most of the time
for their families. And that's the only way you would think somebody would do this.
Yeah, most of the time there's some kind of compensation for this. And I remember that one of the CEO of one of the companies that's in stage 3 or phase 3 clinical trials, her kids were the first ones to sign up for the vaccine. And I think that just goes to show you that our science has evolved a lot. There are going to be some side effects, and I think that's to be expected. And the degree of those side effects are probably something that we're not going to see. But then also, the issues associated with this disease are something that we are not going to understand for generations.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with a friend of mine yesterday who had it, and she had it bad. And, was...
She the one that was traveling?
No. No, this was a different one. So down in San Diego, and now she's on daily hyperbaric oxygen to try to reverse some of the pulmonary scarring as a result of this. It's been she had it early on.
Okay.
And so
she's still she's struggling healing.
Still just walking, to the bathroom, and she has to still take a nap sometimes. And so
that's scary. I would be so petrified. I can't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in crutches with the kidney infection. I can't even imagine what my immune system, if I, God forbid, ever got that.
Yeah, and those are things that we have to be aware of, right? So ultimately, we've gone off into left field and right field and center field and into the bleachers on this one. But
because it deals with so many things as parents, and then how we're bringing this home to our children. And I feel when it comes to going back and forth with our exes, right, or them being surrounded by other people because we can't control what's going on at their parents, the other parents' house. But is this a conversation that you've been able to talk to with her about?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, if you can't, guys, girls, men,
not everybody
women,
can talk to their exes.
You
they
can't
get offended. If you're like, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing a great job. And how about you?
Look, that's, you bring up a really great point, Chady, is that this is not a personal attack conversation. This is look, our marriage didn't work out, our relationship didn't work out, we're co-parents, and this, above all other time in history, is a time that we have to co-parent properly. Yep. And what we did a really good job of communicating, and again, I always applaud her, because she's, in situations like this, she's very receptive, and I can be a butthead sometimes, but it was just like, hey, look, how are we ensuring that we're all healthy? And I said, I just want to make sure that, we're kind of limiting the number of people that she's around at your house, at my house. We're doing a really good job of teaching her to wash her hands, that she shouldn't be touching her face. And so it's a communal effort to make sure that we're not putting each other at risk. So I think it's not a difficult conversation, guys, if you
Yeah.
approach it from the standpoint of, look, this is what we all need to do to be healthy. And maybe the other person's like, I don't believe in the virus, whatnot. Well, then the simple answer is like, then humor us, right? Like, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. Let's let the doctors determine that. And for the time being, let's ensure that we're all healthy, right? Because you know what? I'm sure that, well, let me rephrase this. At certain points, I'm sure everybody thinks like, I wish my ex would,
Disappear.
disappear.
Right.
That's not actually the case, right? Like our kids need both parents,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
at a time where there are probability factors that could dictate this disease could take one of those parents, it's imperative that we do everything we can to make sure that our kids have both of our parents, to support them. And look, going through this, like we don't know what life is going to be like in 12 months,
Mm-mm.
24 months. I mean, shit, who knows how long this shit's
We
going
don't
to be out
even
there.
know what's gonna happen next week when kids supposed to start school. Like, we keep getting emails, and you said that you're getting messages daily or calls. But as parents, like, what is that first week gonna look like for our kids when they do go to school? Because I know in New York and California they're doing mostly virtual, but in other states they're actually having kids go in, and they're gonna test out the waters with the mask and social distancing and.
And how is it going to work with teenagers, right? Like, I
I
was a
know.
teenager. You could put a mask on until it's time to, make out at lunch. And then I'm like,
Yeah, well, we'll see.
hormones?
I think we're gonna find out a lot in the next couple weeks, if anything. And we're open again to if people have ideas on how, as parents, how can we manage, you know, all of this? Like, how are we able to? It's I don't even have the answers to this. I want more feedback on from other parents on how they're navigating through all this, or even teachers. How do you think teachers feel about this?
When did teachers become a high risk occupation? And they are now.
I know.
And, we teachers,
Teachers, we're talking about people who are working at Walmart as high risk because they're like,
yeah.
what's sad about all of this is that we don't have churches or gyms open, but yet we have water parks open. There are hairstylists who are not able to work, who are trained specifically to deal with, like, germs and cleanliness, and yet, we're going to bring kids to school who are not trained, that they're just out of control.
There seems to be a general sense of lunacy surrounding this, right? And um, I don't want to turn it political, but at a
Mm-mm.
certain point we have to. And I really applaud a post that I saw from Robert Redford the other day. And I would never attempt to recreate the beauty of his words in that post, but I highly recommend, Google it and check it out. But what he talked about was, listening to the radio when he was younger and listening to, Roosevelt talk about uniting the country and, how leadership at that point was done in a soft, quiet, unifying way. And he specifically calls out and says, our leadership, political leadership right now is so divisive. It is so, it is designed to split people apart instead of bringing
Mm-hmm.
them back together. And what we're looking for now is leadership that A, should have caught this virus a long time ago,
Yeah.
and B, should be unifying us and making us recognize that, yes, we have hard work ahead, but in that hard work, we will band together and find a way through this. And that's, God, like, it's,
He's got positive vibes out there. That's good. I mean, that's great
yeah,
that
check the post out. It's brilliant.
I'll check it out. I don't follow Robert Redford, but he's like one of my favorite actors.
Yeah.
It's great. But yeah, I mean, I think you and I will be texting each other a lot, trying to see how we can get through these next couple of weeks with our kids starting school, us staying on track with all our you know, work adventures that we are, because we all have different projects going on,
Yeah.
and being parents, like, I think, and then our relationships that we are in, like for me, I have, my boyfriend is going to be homeschooling his two kids, and he's never homeschooled. But he seems pretty optimistic about it. He's super excited about it because he's never done it, but he's excited to be around his kids more. But I'm like, it's hard. I did third grade homeschooling with my daughter because we were from Sacramento to LA and Beverly Hills. And at that time, I was like, this is very hard. It's third grade. So I can't even imagine homeschooling our kids.
Did you see The Incredibles 2?
I have.
Yeah, there's that point where he's like, the kids, he's like, he's doing math homework. He's like, when did they change math?
Yeah.
Like that's gonna be me. Like,
Yeah.
it's carry the one.
Yeah, it's like it's not timetables anymore. It's like it's a whole different, like the way they do things is so different, and it's gonna be an interesting next 4 months for us as parents and the kids. I think it's very unfortunate what the kids are gonna be going through the next couple of years, because especially you think about like kids who are like playing with the kids in the sandbox, and then you have things you think about the kids that are going to high school. My daughter starts high school this year. This is a shitty way to start high school.
Yeah, it is.
Or think about seniors who are graduated and it's like they couldn't even walk.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting time for all of us. And as parents, we just have to stay positive and find innovative ways to like keep our kids active. There is a lot of online schooling and sources to get tutors that are being offered. I know a couple if you ever need any. And we really have no choice but to make the best of it.
Yeah, and I think to that extent, the rules of the road just have to be patience, right? Be patient with yourself, be patient with your kids. Know that it's not going to be easy. Don't expect wine and roses. And if we can endure this, live, grow stronger, fight another day, is the work that we put in, the effort that we put in now, to really drive home the importance of what we do in the next couple months is going to set us up for success in the future. And we can flounder forever, or we can work hard and we can succeed.
Yeah. And so from here on out, what's the plan as far as like now that, we have a disease that's going around, a virus, and as you said, scared of your child, what are your next building blocks?
Good question. It's funny, the old saying, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Unfortunately, that was not that was not coined in the age of Corona. But here's the reality, right? Is I can only do what I can do, and so I don't want to say it's up to the fates. But if I do everything that I know that I can do, I can wear a mask out in public. I can, be diligent about the way that I wash my hands. I can be. I can stay healthy. I cannot overeat. I cannot drink excessively. I can do all the things to make sure that I'm healthy, that my daughter's healthy. Then at a certain point, I just have to kind of relinquish the control. And I can't let the fear of this stop me from snuggling with my daughter.
No.
And that moment was a defining moment in my life where I recognized that it doesn't matter what the outcome is, that those precious moments with her are ones that I'll never get back. And I could never live with myself, pushing my daughter away because of something as stupid as my fear of a virus. And
even thinking like that, so it's so profound to hear you say that, because even as me, knowing that if my daughter got sick, I would want to be in the hospital with her, knowing that it would jeopardize me. Even if I knew that I wouldn't survive it as much as she would.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine not being there or being able to support her in any way.
And it's that belief that makes you such an amazing mom.
Thanks.
Because, that's, we are who we are. And it's like our kids are our world, and, they're always going to be.
Yep.
So, well, I think it's a good place to end it.
Yeah. We love our babies.
We love our babies.
Yeah.
Even our fur babies.
Yes. I have even the fur babies that are walking around here. I take anybody's fur babies.
Yes. Speaking of, there's one right over there that's...
I know. There's a dog walking around, and he's older and cute, and he's like a couple pounds. And
are we talking about me or the dog?
Thank
you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be here all week. Try the veal.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys. And then we'll think of, if you guys have any topic ideas, please shoot them to us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that we've got some guests coming up that we're excited to share with you.
Yeah.
We've got a book that's coming out.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. This is one that I can't tell you. I'm stoked about this one. This is it's part of a series that we're going to talk a little bit about in the future and how this all came to be. But we're really working on some charitable contributions with the sales of this book. So highly encourage you to check that out. Some great guests. Some more topics, obviously, as we deal with COVID, as we deal with all things being a single parent. So Again, until next time, this has been another episode of Single Parent Daily with your hosts,
Chady Dunmore.
and Evan DeMarco, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.